Hey, what's up everyone? I'm back. I'm here to do a final review of The Last of Us 2. I know I've already made like 4 videos on this game already, but now that the whole storm of hate surrounding it is over, the dust has settled, I'm gonna review it one last time. So, let me start this off by saying, no one was more excited for this game than I was. And if you say, well, I was more excited! I know you're a liar, so stop lying to me, and also stop lying to yourself. The Last of Us is one of my favorite games of all time. Look, I'm even holding up the PS3 version and the remaster. They told one of the best stories I've ever heard in a video game. They were great. So, with such a great story, you may wonder, how did they continue it in great ways? How did they improve upon the first one? Well, they didn't. Like the Act Man said, there are very few games out there I hate beyond comprehension, to the point where I just get a physical reaction upon seeing their cover art. Ugh! Yeah, I hate this effing game. It is a narrative disaster. It's a complete failure in terms of story, narrative. Not everything. I was about to say everything it did, but not really. So, I'm going to get more into depth with that in a second once I stop this video recording. I have never been more disappointed with a game's release ever than I was with this. I was so hyped waiting for it, and it's a complete narrative disaster. It's a contrived mess. So, there will be spoilers ahead, so I'll give you 5 seconds to get off this video if you don't want to be spoiled. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, time's up, stupid. You should have left. Alright, so, basically, it starts shortly after the events of the first one in the town of Jackson, with Joel finding a guitar for Ellie and telling Tommy what happened in the Firefly Hospital at the end of the first one. So, then it cuts to Joel teaching Ellie how to play. Well, he plays a song for her, and he sings. The voice acting and music in this game is incredible. They nailed the atmosphere. And apparently, the voice actor of Abby, the most hated character in this game, Laura Bailey, apparently she got death threats for this. So, mainstream gaming journalists are gonna use that to push the message that all gamers are mentally unstable incels. Which I think they probably did. Let's be honest, they did. So, basically, if you've heard of this game, you've heard that the narrative sucks. It's a generic revenge bad thing, but it's not even executed well. I liked some of the ideas they had. That's why I still bought this game, why I still had faith in it, even after the leaks. Yeah, I was more disappointed with the final product than I was with the leaks, honestly. But, yeah, the story, I can't stress how bad it is. So, it's in the first 2 hours, Joel, he was the lead character in the first one, in case you live under a rock. He's killed off in the first 2 hours with a golf club. And you know what happens leading up to it? So, Abby and her crew, Owen, Mel, Jordan, and Manny, those are all the people I can remember, they're all going to Jackson looking for Joel so they can kill him because one of the nurses at the end of the first game was Abby's dad. And apparently he was close with a lot of them, so they want to get revenge. And yeah, this is how the whole cycle of revenge bad thing starts. So, Abby wanders off on her own after she's mad at Owen because they're discussing how they're going to get information on Joel, and Abby's suggesting more drastic approaches where they ambush a patrol and maybe torture them for information. So she decides, you know what, I'm going to do this whole thing myself. And she ends up getting attacked by a lot of infected, and she happens to meet up with the man she was looking for, Joel, and Tommy. They were on patrol. The chase sequences in this game are pretty good, and this was a pretty good chase sequence. I don't have footage of it because I haven't got to that part yet, and I want to replay this entire game, honestly. So, Tommy accidentally shouts Joel's name, so Abby pretty much figured out that it is Joel, even though she hadn't known his last name yet. who knows, it could have been any Joel, honestly. And then they go back to the lodge, where they go inside, and Tommy just decides to introduce. He decided to introduce both of them. He was like, "Hey, I'm Tommy. This is my brother Joel." Like, you're really gonna introduce who you are to a group of armed strangers? I know you're saying, but they became more human at the end of the first one, so they're gonna be more open with people. Yeah, but have you heard of bandits? Bandits are still a thing. So, and they were holed up in a lodge that was just outside your town. Who knows? And they were armed too. They could have been planning to raid your town. And they decided to just give their names out like that. And how did they even know it was the right Joel, too? And you know what Joel says after Tommy introduces them? After Abby and her crew have just frozen and are silent? He goes, "Y'all are acting like you heard of us or something." Now, this is not real Joel. If we're talking about the real Joel, remember that scene in The Last of Us 1 where him and Ellie are driving into the city and there's a man who's acting like he's injured on the road, and Joel keeps going and says, "He ain't even hurt." See, he trusted nobody, and that's what kept him alive throughout the entire apocalypse. I don't think he even introduced his name to Henry and Sam. He might have, I don't remember, but all I can remember is that Henry, he just called Joel old timer. So see, he trusted no one, and that's what kept him alive. And just now he decides to abandon his instincts completely. They talked about how Joel would trade anything for a cup of coffee. Yeah, I guess he traded his instincts for a cup of coffee, because that was pretty stupid of him. And then Abby blasts his leg off with a shotgun, and Tommy had a clear sight on the shotgun. And with everyone just stopping and looking at them, you'd think they'd hop behind a couch or something and get into a shootout. But no, they just stand completely still. Tommy should have seen the shotgun before Abby blasted his knees off, and he also should have known that they were armed and dangerous, because apparently he saw their jackets. You could pick apart that entire scene piece by piece. So Ellie, as she hears noises from the basement, she opens the door. She has a clear shot on Abby, as Abby's beating Joel's head in with a golf club. And for some reason, she decides to inch closer out of the doorway, and she gets tackled when she could have just stood there, pulled the trigger, killed Abby, and then who knows, maybe shot a few others, and then Joel wouldn't have died. But no, she gets tackled, and then Abby, who's built like a OG Roblox character, she plays mini golf. She plays a fun game of mini golf with Joel, and she hits a Joel in one and kills him. And then Ellie, even though throughout this entire game she's like, "I hate Joel, he sucks," because she knows about what he did in the end of the last one, she's like, "Well shoot, now I gotta go and get revenge for him." And she's also just a total cynic throughout this entire journey. Like, where's that optimistic side to her that we loved from the first one? She's just a female Sasuke Uchiha now. And it sucks, because she was way better in the first one than she is now. And, geez, you're just... And, yeah, so basically she goes on a quest of revenge. Dina goes with her, even though she's pregnant. They pulled a pregnant lady card twice here. Once with Dina, and once with Mel. So, my theory is that Neil Druckmann couldn't figure out how to make a character emotional other than, "Hey, look, they're pregnant. Revenge bad. Look, you just killed a mother and her unborn child." Yeah, because you end up killing Mel. It's like, look what revenge made you do. It's like, but I didn't want to do this. Your QuickTime event forced me to do it. I would have spared her otherwise, you monster. Yeah, it's dumb. They decided to go fight on the front lines, even though they're pregnant. It is very dumb. And Dina none of the characters really have any personality traits at all. Like, Dina, she tells jokes sometimes. Jesse, the same thing. He sometimes tells jokes, and that's about it. And characters are just killed off and completely forgotten. I'm talking main characters, too. Like Jesse. He was your partner at one point. He's the father of Dina's kid. Yep, he just gets shot in the face and he's pretty much forgotten for the rest of the game. It's like that bullet erased him from existence. Manny, one of Abby's friends, they try to get you to like Abby's friends, but I was cheering when all of them died, basically, especially Manny. Because Manny, he's basically just Neil Druckmann's self-insert character, and when Joel gets killed, he says, "Burn in hell, pendejo," and spits on him. It's like, of course I'm going to cheer when he dies. I shouted, "Yeah, F you, pendejo," because he sucked. Pretty much all the characters suck, even Ellie now. And Abby, she could have been a good villain, but she just remained kind of cartoonishly evil throughout the whole thing. Like, she's passing through a prison, and she's like, you know, I'd like to have a few minutes with all these people after everything we've done. Honestly, she didn't even need to be a villain of this story. Isaac, he is the leader of the Washington Liberation Front, which Abby works for. He's terrifying. He could have been a cool villain. Like, who knows, maybe he's Marlene's brother and he wants revenge on Joel for what he did. And so you go ahead and you go after Isaac. But Isaac has 2 scenes and then he gets killed. Just like Joel, he had 2 scenes before he got killed. In this entire game, he probably had a total of like 7 scenes. And so it's a whole revenge quest, but you don't even get revenge on Abby. Nah, you kill everyone except for Abby.
What is that?
You'll be fine.
Really?
Hi.
Come on.
Well, let's get into the gameplay. The core gameplay is fine. It's more or less the same as the first one, but man, it feels a lot more dynamic. There's jumping, you can go prone. It feels impactful, but however, the health bar, they decided to make it all white, and when you lose health, it just turns light gray. So sometimes it's hard to tell whether you've lost health until it's in the red. But it's not too much of a problem, honestly. You can now do aerial assassinations, and clickers. Clickers have just been they've been made way too easy, honestly. With Ellie's knife, you don't even have to worry about, like, how am I going to kill this thing? I don't have any shivs. Unless you're playing as Abby. Abby handles a lot like Joel, and she's pretty fun to play. Like, the set pieces in this game are fantastic. Like, you have the attack on the Haven, the Seraphite Island. The only characters I feel like they really tried with were 2 Seraphite kids, Yara and Lev. But at one point, you do this mission where Yara, her arm's been broken and needs to be amputated because it's infected. You have to go get medical supplies for her. It's a 2-hour glorified fetch quest. Then after you do that, you have to go back to the Seraphite Island because Lev decides, you know what, I gotta go get my mom. Because, you know, she's a firm believer in the Seraphite. She's totally gonna come with me because we've been ousted because I shaved my head and I wasn't supposed to do that. Oh yeah, and by the way, there were a lot of leaks about transgender things. I think they handled that well with Lev. The reason why Lev chooses to be a boy, it makes sense because he was supposed to be married off to one of the village elders, and he didn't want that. So I feel like they handled that well. Yara and Lev were pretty good new characters. So, basically, you do all that stuff, you go back to the island, you get Lev after he murders his mom, and then, you know, you encounter Isaac and the Washington Liberation Front. They're rivals with the Seraphites. They just killed Yara right there. So the game effectively wasted your time. You got all that medical supplies for Yara, and then she just dies, but while she's on the ground, she kills Isaac. And then as Abby starts gunning down her own people, she pretty much feels no remorse at all. Yeah, the story, it's a complete disaster. But let's get into another positive. So, the art, the graphics, visuals, the detail. Everything this game did artistically, except for Abby's body, they got perfect. Now, Neil Druckmann, before, in case you see this, before you start yelling at me on Twitter, calling me a homophobe, calling me transphobic, or I don't know, it's not that. Women can be muscular, but the thing is, well, I don't know why I brought up homophobic there, but the thing is, though, is that her body doesn't really look natural. Like, you can have a woman look muscular, but she just looks like a muscular man's body with a head on top. Like I said before, she looks like an OG Roblox character or a Minecraft character. It just doesn't look natural, but everything else in terms of style and art, they got perfect. Atmosphere, music, all of that. And the detail. Sometimes when you kill soldiers, other soldiers will scream out their names, and now they have dogs to sniff you out. Dogs will grieve their owners when you kill them, and there's detail with the gore, and you can feed enemies to clickers. There is so much polish in this game. It is beautiful. They spared no expense making this one of the best looking games I've ever seen. This and Ghost of Tsushima, crap like that, they all look fantastic, showing you the power of the PS4. Well, now kind of lack of power now that the PS5 is out. Man, I'd like to see what this game looks like on PS5. But yeah, this game is held back substantially by the story. You know what? I'm going to show you what Naughty Dog did with the first game. That's what they did. Now let's get back to the ending where you don't even kill Abby. Now, it's stupid how it plays out. So, Ellie, she starts drowning Abby, and then suddenly, whoa, I'm having a flashback. Hey, Ellie, it's me, Joel. Remember that time I made you a grilled cheese sandwich? Wait a minute, killing people is wrong. You know what? I'm gonna give up my revenge quest and go home, only after I've murdered hundreds of people. And I've also lost a bunch of my friends. Yep, and then Dina left her and took JJ, her and Jesse's kid, who's named after Jesse and Joel. So pretty much, Ellie lost everything, and Abby just lost her muscles and a bit of her blood. That was about it. So the core shooting mechanics of this game are fine. Like the final like base, you infiltrate the round resort. That was a fun mission. You can go about it in multiple ways. In the New Game Plus, they let you take the silenced SMG. They give you your weapons from the first playthrough, unlike the first one does. And they make some quality of life changes. So, this game, it gets some things right from the first one, but overall, it is nowhere near as good. Like, after beating this, I thought, you know what, the first one shouldn't have had a sequel, but then I watched the video by A Closer Look called The Last of Us Part 2, How to Divide a Fan Base. The guy who writes this is a professional writer, or the guy who made that video, even though he thought Spider-Man Far From Home was boring. So basically, he made a much better story in a few months than Naughty Dog did in years. And he also set up a natural villain for a Part 3. Like, there's a general of Fedra who managed to find a cure that kind of works like antibiotics, and he's the only one who has control over its supplies. And he's manipulating other factions to fight against the Washington Liberation Front, or the Fireflies, so that they can get supply of it. Overall, it was a really cool story, and his story gave me the satisfaction that this game couldn't. It adds the established lore by saying, guess what, the infected, they don't die when they turn. Yeah, that person is still within them, and they can see everything they do. It also adds an element of body horror and a sense of urgency, because instead of Joel being killed off in the first 2 hours, Dina gets kidnapped, and Joel simply gets his leg blown off, because Abby decides, you know what, I'm better than you, but I'll make sure you never walk again. And she thought that Dina was Ellie. So, this game basically has no sense of urgency at all. Because, let's be honest, what's going to happen if you don't make it to Abby on time? She'll just get killed by someone else? No big deal. Whatever. Or, she'll go somewhere else. Yeah, you can go there. You track her all the way to Santa Barbara. So that shouldn't be a big deal. And the way the story's structured, too. They have the flashback sequences just sandwiched in the mid-game. Like, they talk about that bar fight. They don't even show... In the beginning, they talk about the bar fight and don't even show what it was about until 17 hours into the game. So, who cares? Who are even these characters anymore? overall, I was very, very disappointed with this game. But I wouldn't really consider it a bad game or a terrible game, because it has that kind of Naughty Dog, Neil Druckmann charm to it. It doesn't have the Bruce Straley or Amy Hennig charm that the first one did, but the atmosphere, a lot of things it does a lot of things great. But the story is what it's held back substantially by. So I'm gonna set its score as a 5 out of 10. It's painfully mediocre. And it's the most disappointed I've ever been with a game's release. So, that's about it. Make sure you like and subscribe. It only takes about 2 clicks. And I will see you guys next time.